Hey, Frank, thanks so much for jumping on the Dream Big podcast. There's a lot of people that haven't been acquainted with you just yet. So tell us a little bit about your background, because I just think it's fascinating.
Yeah, well, first off, Bob, thank you very much. It's a real privilege to be on this podcast. And obviously, it's a great podcast, and you've been doing great things with your book, your podcast, and everything else. So it is an honor to join you.
Yes.
A little bit about myself. I was CEO of Home Depot for 8 years. Now I do mostly from a business perspective. I serve on a number of boards. I'm the chairman of the Delta Airlines board. And I also spend a lot of time in business startups and doing, hopefully giving back. One of the things I think we actually connected because of a podcast that I have, which is called Crazy Good Turns, which celebrates people who do crazy good things for others. And you're one of those people. So
fun.
As I say,
People are like getting their mind around that. Be like, you were the Home Depot guy.
yeah.
And the Delta. So essentially a pretty low achiever. Was that a great, so we just.
Well, and we share, I'm a lawyer by training as you are.
Oh, nice. But you went
Yep.
straight. Congratulations.
Yep. Exactly. As did you in a way.
Yes, totally. Well, tell us this. You've been exposed to so much in business and life and people and all. I bet there's been a couple standout kind of ideas that have been thematic for you. For me, it's been availability, just the power of being available. You don't need to put your phone number in the back of a whole bunch of books to be available, but it's one way. Tell me some of the things that I'm always hesitant to say, like the one or the biggest or the best, but what are some of the leadership principles that are kind of current in your mind now, having experienced so much in so many different contexts?
Well, I'll give you the two that absolutely stand out. So it's a question I actually have thought quite a bit about, because as a lawyer, I was not actually thinking about, I never thought I would be the CEO of a large retailer, nor did anybody else in the world ever think I was going to be the CEO of a large retailer. And one of the things I learned, I stepped in as CEO of Home Depot in 2007, which was right at the start of the housing crisis. And largely before that, I'd had a professional career running small teams. And, Home Depot at the time had over 350,000 people. And so you think about how do you think about leading an organization of that size? And my number one conclusion after 8 years on the job is that the single most important thing to do in terms of aligning an organization is what you do in recognizing and celebrating the people who are doing a great job. That most people, when they come to work, they want to do a good job. It's just they have no idea actually what is being sought after, what's expected of them. And the best way to explain that to an organization is to literally or figuratively bring someone up onto the stage and say, this is what it looks like to do what we're interested in. In the Home Depot case, it was great customer service. I spent hours every weekend writing handwritten notes of thanks to hourly associates when I got examples of great customer service.
Yeah.
Many, many other examples like that of just how do you reinforce and tell a story around the people who are doing what you want them to do within your company. That was lesson number one, the power of recognition and celebration. The second really interesting lesson, it was more a reflection in retrospect than at the time. I spent a decade working at GE before going to Home Depot. At the end, I reported directly to Jack Welch, who's a very iconic business figure, a very demanding boss, a very hard-charging individual. And I made a practice every year for the 8 years I was CEO. Every year I would spend a day with Jack to fly down to Florida where he was living and kind of get CEO 101 training from him, which was fascinating. That would be its own book. The last year, I asked him a question that I wouldn't have had the courage to ask in the first year because it was sort of such a sophomoric question was, all right, Jack, you've seen all these amazing business leaders in your life. What's the single most important character trait of a leader? What is the thing that most defines a leader? And his answer completely shocked me because he said generosity. And I think my face expressed my complete shock because my experience of Jack he'd been somebody who, feel like he would rip your heart out if you did the wrong thing. He was very demanding.
Yeah.
Generosity wasn't the first word that came to mind. But when I asked him about it, and I said, boy, that surprised me. And he explained it. He said, every great leader is fueled by the success of the people around him or her. And then when I rewound the tape and looked at Jack's interactions with me, as demanding as he was, he also genuinely, he just enjoyed my success when I was successful. That fueled him. And I think that's true. So those are my two big learnings. You need
I
to
love
be
that.
fueled by the success of the people around you, and you need to recognize and celebrate the people who are doing the right thing.
Yeah, my first reaction to that was that sometimes we think we need to give people more information when what they really need is more examples. And
Yeah.
so to like show it, I'm just even thinking of a circumstance where somebody asked Jesus a question. He said, don't tell anybody. And I think the whole idea is show people, don't tell people.
Right.
Like just show them. I don't think he's trying to keep anything a secret, but people know what you believe when they see what you do. And so
Exactly.
generous in spirit, generous in financially, generous in time. So pick what fits for you. Sweet Maria Goff isn't going to be answering phone calls from strangers like I do every day. That ain't happening. Her world is me, the people we made, the people they married, and the people they made. And so she has a lot of clarity on that. For me, I agree with those. But then there's also another loop, which is everybody else. And I don't know, how did you come wired from the factory? Are you like have a large capacity for a lot of people and the interactions, which would be like the hallmark of an Enneagram 7, like just the enthusiast, or are you kind of like a little bit more reserved?
So that's a wonderful question. And wired from the factory is, I'd say, by nature, more of an introvert. But the other conclusion from my time at Home Depot is, so it talks a lot about leading from an inverted pyramid, where the CEO is at the bottom of the pyramid rather than the top, which I think is fundamentally an accurate way of thinking about business. Gravity isn't your friend. The CEOs who think they sit on the top floor and messages cascade down are fooling themselves. That's not how it works. Messages and what you want it moves up by osmosis through an organization. And what you realize is that you want people around you who radiate energy rather than absorb energy. And I realized in both my job and life generally, and you're a perfect witness of this, you want people who radiate out. And what I learned was, however you're wired, it's like that is still what you need to do. It may not come exactly naturally, but it's your job. And it's not I think in a broader sense, it is, you get people who absorb and they hug whatever their blessings are to them and keep them close to themselves. And then there are people who take their blessings and spread them as widely as they can. And as much as possible, you want to be in that latter group.
You strike me as that guy, that you're just trying to leave it all on the field. There was a friend who sent me a poster. I don't know, maybe he should be a former friend, but he said there's 4,000 weeks that we have, give or take, in our life. And he had filled in all the weeks I'd already lived. And it'd be like, oh,
Yeah,
dang.
scary. Very,
It's a
very.
great
Yeah.
perspective giver. And so if we can have in context, like instead of go to a solution right away, here's the fix, understand the context of the person asking, because what they're actually asking for is permission to dream something. And if you or I start controlling them, the people don't want to be controlled. And what I want to do instinctively is control what I don't understand. So
Right.
what I'm shifting, I'm seeing a small shift in my heart in that I'm trying to understand what I don't understand. So I'm not trying
Yeah.
to immediately go into lawyer, fix it, control it, whatever. And those parents that are listening, I'm just telling you, you're going to save your kids a lot of couch time by not trying to control what you create, but to try to understand what you create, to say,
So that's so brilliant. And I got it. This is a side note. The most interesting, so you go to lots of these business, meetings and seminars. The most interesting one, and it was pre-COVID, was I was with a group and they had about 25 CEOs of companies that were run by private equity companies. So very accomplished CEOs. And the discussion was around family and how you interacted with family. And the first question asked to all these CEOs around the table was, what was the first car that you drove as a teenager? And everybody's answer was, just a hopeless wreck of a car, whatever the particular wreck of a car, hopeless wreck of a car. And then they asked, what car does your child drive? And everybody's answer was, BMW, fancy car. And then the person said, what's the culture of your family? And that was a challenging question for those CEOs. And then the comment was made, understand that you do not run them the way you run your company. You have to figure out a different way of establishing that whatever template you're interested in with your family than what you're used to in your day job.
so good. I was just thinking about my first car was a 1971 Volkswagen Beetle. And now fast forward, however many years, 63 minus 16. And my car is a 1971 Volkswagen Beetle. Now it's a different one, but the reason I got it was for a different reason. I wasn't trying to drive a classic. I was trying to slow it down because I make coffee nervous. I'm so like amped and go, go, go. And this car with a stiff breeze downhill would maybe hit 45.
Right.
And so I'm just not in a big hurry because it doesn't have hurry in it.
Yeah.
And there's just something about even controlling some of your inputs, like whether it's consuming too much news or other people or whatever it is, but to just say, how are you spending your time? And what a great thing to just pause and reflect on that and to say,
Yeah.
what am I trying to create in terms of a culture for the family?
Right. Exactly right.
And this is just whetting my appetite. I want to pause on one last thing. It's a shared experience. It's what you did when you went down to Florida, that you
Yeah.
have a shared experience. It isn't just like swapping an email with somebody, but people that want to meet with me need to come to Tom Sawyer Island at Disneyland. And it's not because I want them to pay $100 to Disney, which doesn't need their $100, but it's a place where it's not a board meeting and we just have such a different conversation on Tom Sawyer Island. Talk about how you're strategic in like picking how you do what you do in business, the conversations, where you have them, how you have them, because I think the position, like as we position are two fellas, two blind men trying to show the other blind man where the bread is. Like
Yeah.
these are the informal conversations that have a lot more staying power in my life than attending a seminar. So talk to me.
So while I was at Depot, it was always on the floor of the store, whether it would be with somebody on the board of directors or somebody else in the business or a vendor or as a good friend of mine said, all in retail, I mean, it's slightly different now with digital, but the fundamental truth is you find what you need on the floor of the store and the interaction with the folks working there and with the customers. Since then, I think walking is the single best shared experience
Yeah.
because silences are comfortable and conversation is easy, and it feels like, everybody's got their rock tumbler on and they're working through something.
I like that. And sometimes you can kind of smell the wood burning when
Yeah.
somebody's got something going on, and you can only get that in proximity to them. You can just
Yep.
tell there's some, and you can ask in a way that doesn't feel like you're prying to say, that just me seems like you got two or three other things you're thinking about. Is there any of those that you feel comfortable talking about? Let me tell you about two or three of the things I'm thinking about that because I want you to know more about me, not
Yeah.
who you think I am, like Bob the balloon guy, but let me tell you about who I am, Bob, the like anxious, wondering about if this is going to work out, fearful times. And there's something about that authenticity. It breeds more authenticity. And I get the sense that was a key part of your leadership.
Well, thank you for that. It was as you find out with any group of folks, it's always a privilege. It's a privilege to be able to talk and have anybody listen on to be honest. So
Yeah, we're right there in that 4,000 weeks. Well, Frank, what
yeah.
a delight. Thanks for spending a couple. I can't imagine how many things are nipping at your schedule, but generous in spirit, generous in time. And I know a lot of people, whether you're stuck in traffic or you're out on a jog, if there was something Frank said that resonated with you, don't just agree with them, like pause, write it down, and just say, this, I'm going to incorporate that in my family. Thanks for listening to the Dream Big podcast, and we'll see you next week.